Hello, I'm Benjamin Limmer, Bureau Chief for Public Transportation at the Connecticut Department of Transportation. And I'd like to welcome you to Along the Lines, a podcast series where we'll share exciting news and updates and explore current issues and ideas on Connecticut's public transportation system. Welcome, everybody, to this very special episode of Along the Lines. Today, I am delighted, to say the least, to be joined by a very familiar voice to many of our listeners, Rich Andreski. Rich's stellar career in public transportation began in New Jersey at New Jersey Transit before he served in the role that I now get to serve in, which is as the Bureau Chief of Public Transportation for the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Rich served in that role from 2015 until 2022. He is now the president and CEO of Trinity Metro in Fort Worth, Texas. Since that time, Rich and I have had the pleasure of having many great conversations, has led to a tremendous friendship as well. So I'm very thrilled that he's joining us today. In this episode, we're going to reflect on his time in Connecticut, talk about the future of public transportation, and also talk about why putting customers first must drive every decision and investment throughout our entire industry, above and beyond just Fort Worth and Connecticut. So, Rich, welcome back to the program that you started.
Hey, Ben, I'm delighted and honored to be joining you on the program. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, and thanks for your time. So, Rich, I, of course, have to start with looking back. You've been gone from Connecticut about 3 years. Looking back on your time at the Connecticut DOT, what are you most proud of, or what were you most proud of?
Oh, wow. Yeah, what a great place to start. Um, I'm not sure everyone realizes what a phenomenal resource the Connecticut DOT and the public transit program is in Connecticut. Um, I have this contrast now, having lived in Texas for 3 years and looking back. Connecticut has this really incredible system and a team behind it that has some really first-rate services. I mean, CT Fast Track is a really remarkable story. The New Haven line, the busiest railroad in the country. So many highlights and so much progress. It's really was an honor to be part of that organization for the time I was there. I think Connecticut sometimes flies under the radar. And so I think what you're doing, Ben, on this program is really, bringing some attention to that success story. I think just one area I'm was particularly memorable was the customer experience initiative, and really beginning to identify those opportunities where we could take transit to the next level.
Excellent. Yeah, and I will undoubtedly want to talk about the customer experience focus throughout the industry as a whole, but specifically the stuff you and I are now working on. Happy to talk about that. And yeah, public transportation in Connecticut, nationally, it's important to tell the story of all of the wonderful things going on here. So thank you for pointing that out as well. So I did want to ask, you were at two very large public transportation systems in the Northeast. You had roles, obviously, at CTDOT, but you also had a leadership role in New Jersey at the statewide New Jersey Transit. So what lessons did you take with you to Trinity Metro in Fort Worth, and what would be your advice to anyone in the public transit industry as a whole?
Yeah, well, I think, there's a very, it's a really fascinating question because in New Jersey and Connecticut, you had these legacy systems that were just part of life. The communities in the Northeast grew up around transit, and transit was just, it was assumed that you had these great transit links to move about and into New York City. And in new markets like Fort Worth and many places in the country, in the Sun Belt region in particular, you sort of have a different challenge. The legacy infrastructure is the highway system. And so there's this really big contrast in terms of how transit is currently set up, and the opportunities are quite different. Um, I would say, first and foremost, regardless of the market you're in, whether you're in New Jersey, Connecticut, or North Texas, you always have to start with your constituents, whether they be the riders, the non-riders, the general public, your elected officials. Um, this is not um, this business is not about just coming up with what you think are good ideas. It's really bringing people along with you and making sure that, um, the initiatives that you're promoting are supported by the broader community.
Absolutely. And you certainly laid a solid foundation here at Condot, which I am eternally grateful for, to say the least. All right, so let's pivot a little bit. Challenges. So, what challenges are you facing in Texas, and especially which ones are similar to the challenges faced, that I'm now facing in your former role in Connecticut, and how do you overcome the challenges?
Well, there is some overlap for sure. That overlap is clearly around funding. There's a sort of a sea change happening here around the federal role, and what that will shake out to be is yet to be determined. But federal support for public transportation has really been essential to our industry, so we're paying close attention to that. The population shifts and demographic changes that are happening are affecting all of us. Maybe perhaps a little differently, but at least in North Texas, we're adding one new resident here in North Texas every 3 minutes. And I can hardly believe that. It kind of, when you say that, you do the math, it's startling. So over the next 1 to 2 decades, we're going to be adding another 4 million people in our region, and that presents real challenges for mobility. How are we going to deal with all those additional people looking to move about? And, our highways are just not up to that task, right? So 4 million people more trying to get to work, go to school. Um, so there's some real challenges to figuring out how to make that growth happen in a way that allows us to maintain a high quality of life. And I would say finally, the similarities are also about what are the kinds of places we want to live. It really is about quality of life. When we're in traffic, when we're frustrated and it's not easy to move around, um, that is a real negative. And so I think whether you're in Connecticut, New Jersey, or Texas, that those kinds of questions are um, front and center for us. And I think there's this huge mandate. We're seeing a mandate in the polling results that we have here that this transcends the partisan politics. It's hard to believe anything does these days, but in our case, we're seeing strong support across the board, across the political spectrum for better transit.
That actually leads me to a follow-up question that I wanted to dig into a little bit more. Do you see much of a difference in the public's perception of public transportation between Connecticut and Texas?
Not as much as I expected. I thought everyone was little bit of a joke when I was leaving Connecticut. They said, the Texans love their cars and trucks, and transit implicit in that was transit was going to be a hard sell. And I have not found that to be the case. We did a very high quality market research study that included polling, focus groups, um, lots of public engagement. And what we found across the board was deep interest in transit, in rail in particular. I'll give you one statistic, and this blew my mind. In the New York Metro, we know most people use transit at least occasionally, if not every day. I wasn't sure what to expect here. I thought if 1 in 10 people use transit, that would be exceptional. Well, it turns out 1 in every 3 residents here in North Texas uses Trinity Metro rail services at least once a year. So 1 in 3. That's not 1 in 3 households. That's 1 in 3 people. What that represents is over 700,000 unique users of our system. And so in a market which you wouldn't think is necessarily inclined to transit, that statistic tells a different story.
Oh, that is fascinating. Of course, my wheels are turning, and I'm wondering what that statistic, what that might translate to within Connecticut as well. So, Rich, thanks for the piece of homework. Um, I want to talk a bit about technology. So, it's changing rapidly within the public transportation industry, especially over the last decade. What do you think has been the most transformative, or what excites you the most about the new changes in technology?
Yeah, Ben, you know me well. Technology is about to disrupt our industry in ways that we've never seen before. And I know that feels like an overstatement, but we have seen what technology has done to other industries. And I think it's mostly a positive change. Here's why. There are markets where transit is well suited and necessary. The most obvious of that is the access into New York City. Could you imagine adding tens of thousands of auto users to the already congested I-95 and Merritt Parkway, right? It would be unthinkable. Wouldn't work. The New Haven line is absolutely essential to the economy of Connecticut. But there are markets both in Connecticut and in Texas where the the numbers aren't really well suited to transit. And historically, we only had a few tools in the toolbox. We had buses and we had trains. And so we made the best. We tried to optimize the service, but it was a blunt instrument for what really there weren't really solutions tailored to those kinds of services, right? Like lighter density, lower ridership. What's happening now with automation, and automation is about to hit us in a big way, is you're going to be able to serve communities that may not have the density for heavy duty transit, either rail lines or fixed route bus services, but would be well served through automated vehicles. And we've heard a lot about automated vehicles for the last 20 years. And I know a lot of folks think they're still another 20 years away. But right now, around the country, in at least 10 major cities, there are ongoing driverless vehicles without safety drivers, on the roads. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I had an opportunity to jump in the back of a Waymo in Austin. And I pinged through the Uber app. I requested a vehicle, and within minutes, one pulled around the corner and no driver. The doors opened. I popped in the back seat with a couple of my colleagues, and off we went. It was about a 15-minute ride through the city of Austin, and the car drove more comfortably and, in my opinion, safer than some of the human-driven Uber vehicles I've been in. So this is no longer a question of if, but how quickly. And I think that's a good thing for our industry. I think we're going to be able to shed some of the underperforming services, perhaps integrate those automated services through our mobile app technology. And it'll be an extension of transit, and then we can regroup and focus on those markets where transit makes the most sense.
That was extremely enlightening. I too got to ride that service in Austin. That is I had a similar experience as to you. So thank you for sharing that, though. So I told you I'd come back to the topic. Both you and I share the passion and recognize the importance of putting customers first and really at the center of every decision that we make as agency leaders. During your time here in Connecticut, you actually started a separate unit focused solely on enhancing the customer experience. And I, of course, am very happy to report that it's all the functions are continuing to implement the recommendations that were part of your vision. We also won a couple of national awards for the effort, so thank you for that. Um, can you talk about how critical it is to put customers first, and really use that as the guiding motivator for all the decisions and all the investments in both projects and service?
Yeah, look, knowing and understanding your customer is essential in any business. We're no different, and I I think understanding what's important to the customer allows us to make smarter decisions about where we invest. I'll give you one example. I mean, I think Ben, you may have observed this as well. There has been, particularly since 2020, there's been this pivot to we all recognize that people are in a hurry and waiting for transit, waiting for anything these days is not going to work. People want services that are reliable but also frequent and on demand. So frequency is king these days in our business, right? We know customers want more frequency, but they want convenience too. I mean, we're hearing in these market research efforts that integration of services, coordination of services, a great mobile experience are not nice. I mean, 10 years ago they were nice to haves. Now they're must haves if we're going to grow our business and be more customer responsive. So um, I think we can't lose sight of that. We have to continue to talk with our customers. Uh, there's 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 tremendous value in that also that customers can be more a partner in advocating for transit. They can be there to support and promote. Um, I say here all the time to my team that because we're running a great service and people are happy with what we're doing, that frees up and gives us the space to think about the future, right? When you're not in a constant battle for customer support, it allows you to think big and be more visionary. So for all those reasons, I think engaging with the customer is absolutely essential.
Well said, well said. Oftentimes I think focus maybe a little too much on the number of people we serve. We're this percent of pre-pandemic or in ridership. And I think what you just described is of equal importance is ensure that the quality side, and it's not just about quantity, but the quality side of what we do is top notch as well. Thank you for that. So I want to talk about. I know in our conversations and our friendship, we talk a lot about leadership. And you were the co-founder of a national emerging leaders program through our trade association known as the American Public Transportation Association. And that program that you helped start was really a leadership development program for rising stars, right? Rising leaders within transit. So, for any listeners just out of school and looking to start a career, or for those who are just thinking of switching their career paths, What would you say to them about working in the public transportation industry, and do you have any advice for them?
I'm really proud of that, Ben. Thank you for asking the question. Our industry has not always been the most visible in terms of a career of choice, uh, and I think it's really important that we get the word out that we're an innovative, forward-thinking, um, customer-focused industry where you can really have a huge impact in your community. I think uh, I have had such a rewarding career. It's really right. We talk about public service. I mean, every day we get to do really important things for our community, and I think that the development of a talent pipeline for our industry is got to be front and center. We need folks in our business that are deeply motivated to deliver great service, but also open to thinking differently. I mean, we're an old industry, right? We go way back. Um, while the idea of running buses in the trains has not evolved significantly, what has evolved is the way we deliver service, the technologies that we use, the vehicles. There's been a lot of, I think, evolution and innovation in our industry that's not always apparent. And so I think one of the benefits of a leadership program and developing a talent pipeline is that we sort of need to be talking about these things and changing maybe the image of our industry as, um, again, as an industry that's open to change and creating innovative solutions. The Apt Emerging Leaders program has been phenomenal in that what we've seen in a very short period of time is folks moving out of that program into rising roles in their respective organizations. And I was hopeful that that program would continue after I was no longer associated with it. It's only improved over time. The demand for that program has been off the charts.
Absolutely, and, I too am, incredibly supportive of, continuing to build a leadership bench within the industry and, within Conduit as well. We actually, I think for several years in a row now, we've participated in the program and looking forward to, participating again this year. So thank you for that contribution. All right, Rich, you're definitely a visionary. I have to ask you the crystal ball type question. So, what do you see for the future of transit? Let's just say 10 years from now. Where do you see it?
It's a really, really interesting question. And I think first I would start with the relevance of that question, which is another way to say that, I think, Ben, right, is how are we going to define success? Um, in 10 years, looking back, where do we want to be as an industry? How do we want to serve our communities? And I'm the first to say that that cannot we cannot continue to measure success by counting number of riders and number of bus routes and number of rail lines, right? There may be great change coming. And so success to me and the evolution of our business should look to be more focused on, this is our mission statement, by the way, connecting people to life. So our new mission here at Trinity Metro is connecting people to life. And what does that look like? I think that looks like lots of different things in different places in our community. For example, in a suburban area, it might mean in the future that through our mobile act technology, we connect you to on-demand vehicles. And they don't look like transit vehicles. They happen to be, maybe they will be driverless. And they take you A to B, and you're not on a fixed route, on a fixed schedule. It may be in the future that we bring services to people. There are lots of folks that have challenges either mobility challenges or cognitive challenges that may prefer services come to them. And so I think we just need to think about whether we are asking people to come to a regularly scheduled vehicle on a regularly scheduled route, or whether this evolution of mobility is going to look very different in different places. I do think, I'll go back to my earlier comment, I do think we're going to be able to refocus our efforts on highly productive corridors with, high density communities where people live and work and there's walkability and where transit can really add tremendous value, traditional transit. And then we will be able to lean into these technologies to serve other markets that are more, less dense. And I think that change is going to happen in a hurry. I don't think we're going to have decades of change here. I think this is going to happen in what is going to feel in the rearview mirror is going to feel like a very brief period. I would say by 2030, I will be surprised by 2030 if every city of at least 250,000 does not have automated on-demand services. I think that's almost a certainty at this point.
Couldn't agree more, Rich. That's quite the way to close this episode. But Rich, huge thank you, Rich Andreski. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Along the Lines. Always a pleasure to chat with you. Can't wait to see you again. I think I typically see you about every month or two. So see you soon, Rich.
Ben, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you again for having me on the program.
Well, as you heard today, as well as in other episodes of this podcast, the future of public transportation is brighter than ever. Advances in technology are transforming the customer experience, making our public transit systems more accessible, efficient, as well as inclusive. Public transportation remains a vital link to education, employment, opportunity, and drives economic growth and enhancing quality of life in communities across the country. But no matter how much we innovate, one thing remains clear: every investment and every improvement must keep the customer at the heart of every decision that we make. I'm Ben Limmer. Join us next time for another episode of Along the Lines. Thanks for listening to this episode of Along the Lines. This is your host, Benjamin Limmer. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please remember to subscribe and share.